7 at facebook.com/1210WPHT.
Good Monday afternoon. Matt Ray sitting in for Rich Zioli. Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. We're taking your calls at 855-839-1210 on Twitter and on Facebook at Matt Ray Talk. So we finally hear from Hillary Clinton on the Brexit. She spoke to a gathering of U.S. mayors Sunday. It was her first public comments on last Thursday's historic referendum. She said the vote shows that the White House needs somebody with foreign policy experience and somebody who doesn't speak off the cuff. It came days after she blasted Trump for his response in Scotland the next day. I say Trump won, as I mentioned, when it came to optics. I'd also argue when it comes to timeliness, he won. Not sure his assessment was on the money. Both campaigns, though, trying to use the Brexit vote to their advantage. Which benefits the most from the uncertainty? Let's bring in Debbie Georgatos. She's a political strategist, also an author and a speaker. The website is ladiescanwetalk.org. Hey, Debbie, how are you on this Monday afternoon?
Very well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. As always, we appreciate it. Let's start with Trump's response on Friday morning. The world was waking up to find out that they said, we're out of here. We are leaving the EU. We want our country back. We voted yes on the referendum. That's it. We're done. We're tired of all this, of being connected to everybody else here. We want our country back. Yes, Trump was in Scotland promoting his golf course, but obviously he was going to have to talk about the Brexit because the press followed him around. So I would say he won on optics and timeliness, but what about his response? Was that on track? I mean, does he get points for saying it really shouldn't affect us here at home if it was handled correctly?
You know, I have to agree with the optics. He looked great and he jumped in, but I actually think he could have given a much better comment, which something along the lines of what you saw in England in this vote to leave the EU is exactly the kind of thing the American voters who support me, Donald Trump, are saying. They want their country back. He could have, I mean, he's saying, well, don't worry, financially it won't hurt us, and that's probably a little naive to say because there were international market repercussions, and there will be, but the spirit of what the people voted for in Brexit is exactly the spirit of the Donald Trump supporters, and kind of a, don't worry, we'll get through. Yes, there'll be some financial repercussions. We'll get through it. That's about all he had to add. I think overall he handled it very well.
And then you had Clinton, who didn't speak publicly until Sunday. She blasted Trump's response with a note from her campaign, and then Sunday she came out and spoke to the mayors and said, look, we need somebody with a steady hand, somebody with foreign policy experience, not somebody who speaks off the cuff and causes more financial chaos. What did you make of her response?
I think she just sounded out of touch. It was almost tone deaf. You know, she's kind of got a resume argument about her run for president. Look at my resume. I've been a senator. I've been a first lady. I've been the Secretary of State. I've met most of the heads of state around the world. I've traveled a lot on airplanes. But it's kind of it's a resume argument. But the substance of what she brings to it, she's talking as though we in America are living in 1970 or 1950. She's not in touch with this fervor in America that's saying, you know, we actually want our own country to be America. We don't want to be overrun by refugees who are causing trouble. We don't want to surrender so much authority to the federal government. I think she's out of touch with the people, and I don't think her resume argument is an answer to what happened in Brexit. It's what she's signaling is, I don't really have my finger in the pulse of the people. I can't figure out what motivates them. So again, go look at my resume.
Does she get points for waiting until Sunday to see how the thing shook out? I mean, granted, a lot of people didn't like Trump's response, but he did respond, and then she threw stones without having her own response. A lot of people were saying, look, Matt, you're not being fair about this. She had to sit and see how things shook out. In the meantime, though, everybody else was weighing in on it. I mean, does she get points for that, for being careful?
I wouldn't give her points for that. Because what she's doing is this calculation. It's a measured, it's not a speak from the heart, speak from your, the depth of your soul kind of feel that you want to hear from a candidate, especially in this election cycle when people are concerned about safety in the world, they're concerned about America's future. It just was too intellectual, too elitist. Sit back and see how the markets do. Maybe I can make some points. I just think if you can speak to the heart of the people and say, wow, the people in England said, I want my country back, and good for them, because people around the world are kind of anti this globalist mentality that's embracing the world. It was great for Trump to more or less acknowledge that, and Hillary just looked measured and ungenuine, not in touch.
We're speaking with Debbie Georgatos. She's a political strategist, author, and speaker. The website, ladiescanwetalk.org. Which of the candidates stands to gain more from the fallout from the Brexit? So, Debbie, let me ask you this, because I know we've spoken a lot over the course of time here, and I know that you did support Senator Ted Cruz. You weren't on board the Trump train. And the polls indicate that he is behind Clinton. Not all of the parties on board. In fact, you had Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell on Sunday basically refusing to answer whether or not he thinks Trump is qualified to head the White House and head the country as well. He said, look, that's up for Donald Trump to make the voters, to convince the voters. But what about this? I mean, why does the Republican Party jump on this entire issue and maybe frame it into the narrative of the Trump campaign, the immigration narrative, the Muslim narrative? I mean, is this something that the GOP could stand to benefit from?
I think so. And the other narrative about it is it's this nationalist love of America and our unique place in the world, our unique identity, love of America, nationalism versus globalism. I mean, it really is, I think, the stark way. Maybe primary voters wouldn't use those terms exactly, but that's what they're feeling or thinking is, why isn't the president, why isn't our country looking out for us? Why aren't we not just securing our border against Islamic immigration and potential violence, but why are we surrendering our borders? Why do we have just that the country feels untethered, and the Republicans could do a lot. Now, in fact, it's funny you remember that, Matt, because you're exactly right. We've spoken enough times. I was a big Ted Cruz supporter. I still think he would have been the better choice. But for all the argument about, make Washington listen, Washington has to listen to the people. Regardless of my views, the people have spoken. And Donald Trump did not win he didn't sneak by and just barely eke out a victory in the primaries. He trounced the other guys. So the people have spoken, and I think the party has to get behind him and find smart ways to do it, like we were just saying. He's talking nationalism. It's a great point.
Is there a Trump hangover right now? Because I mentioned the polls, and it's still early. I'm not a big. I don't like citing polls, but frankly, it's the pulse of the country right now, so it can have some impact down the road. But are we suffering from a Trump hangover right now when you take a look at Clinton versus Trump? And is he going to be able to pivot, or should we just ignore the polls?
Well, I love ignoring polls because I do think they're often skewed, but, they are of concern at this point. I think after the conventions, once the conventions are over and we have solidified, we no longer have to say presumptive nominee, but he will be the nominee, Donald Trump, then you've got to just decide, this Supreme Court is at stake, many big issues. Hillary Clinton will take the country just down the same path that Barack Obama has. And so I think the polls are a little alarming, but I do think that the hangover is a great word. Or people are just sitting back, especially honestly Cruz supporters. They're so unhappy that they thought he was just the answer to this time, our times, and didn't get the nomination. And I think some of those folks will come around. I think they're going to wait till after the convention and make sure he actually gets the nomination. And I know that the polls aren't saying this, but I do think Donald Trump will win. I think he'll beat Hillary because I think where most people are is kind of where the people in England were when they voted on Brexit. They're just, come on, we want our country back. We want someone who loves America and says so loud and clearly. And I don't know if I have enough time to add one quick. Go ahead.
Well, Debbie, we have to break for the news here. I want to hold you on through the break. That's fine. Debbie Georgatos, a political strategist, author, and speaker. The website, ladiescanwetalk.org. We need to go to some news here, but we'll get right back with you, Debbie. Matt Ray sitting in for Rich Zeoli, Talk Radio 1210 WPHT.